What's happening, everybody? Monday, 420. So everybody's happy 420 to everybody moving a lot slower today. 2026. My name is Kevin Smith. Thank you so much for tuning into Loud Majority Live. We got a jam-packed show for you guys today. Yes. I love it. I love it so much. As you see, well, if you're watching on any of the other platforms, you see Rino Mike Lawler gets absolutely dog-walked on Fox News Sunday. And it really is great. It really is great because there's nothing I enjoy more than when people want to be a star in their own right, but do not possess star-like qualities. They get exposed pretty quickly. And Joey Jones and Tommy Lahren absolutely dog-walk him, which is great because I got to tell you, I don't like him at all. But we're going to talk about this because there's a new era of politics coming now, and a lot of the mainstream Republicans choose not to see it. I don't know if they're doing it on purpose. I don't know if they're just naive. They think that they're more important than the rest of us. I'm not really sure what it is. But on the heels of that, Scott Presler makes a gigantic announcement that if John Thune doesn't shape up, he's going to go out of his way to primary all of his friends, which is good because that needs to happen. Pressure needs to be applied to these people to either get in line or get the hell out of our way. Also, Nick Shirley continues to do phenomenal work confronting the Speaker of the California Senate on a bill aimed at putting him in prison, or bankrupting him at the very least. Also, an update on the LA fraud investigations. You're never going to believe it. You're never going to believe it, guys. It took 9 years. 9 years, but finally someone's investigating something we all knew to be the case all along. Also, for all the people out there who said that, who believe that disagreement means disloyalty, Joe Rogan hanging out in the White House. Biggest show in the world. Maybe the most influential person in America outside of the president, passes a gigantic piece of legislation to help many of our veterans. And another huge leak comes out of the Supreme Court. But before we get into all that, guys, do me a favor and hit that thumbs up button. Share the video out all over the place. We are rocking. We are rolling here today. Guys, head on over to loudmajorityusa.com. That's loudmajorityusa.com. Sign up for the newsletter. Check out our shop. That is the best way to support this show and everything we've got going on over here. You guys can use promo code RUMBLE. Pick up the spring collection today, guys. The weather is getting nice out here. I know the weather's getting nice because I can't breathe. So it must be springtime. It must be springtime. So, say hello. Let me know where you're watching from. Giddy up. Let's go. What's up, Tired? What's up, M. Norton? What's going on? How are you? Carol, good stuff. TPH, how are you? Guys, let me know where you're watching. Let me know where you're checking things out. Peaches, what's happening? Very good stuff. Let's dive right on in. Because there is a mantra in politics that bothers me in a very serious way. And I have spent the last, we're at like 5.5 years now since I stumbled across Sean Farish in a parking lot at a beach. And, then all of this was born. We're about at that half the year mark. Pretty wild, if you ask me. And we decided that we were going to do things a little bit differently. We were going to challenge the status quo. And you're starting to see it happen almost everywhere, where people out there who are elected to do the work that we sent them to Congress, to the State House, to many of the other places to do, are being challenged left, right, and center. And you're also seeing people who think they're living in 1995. What do I mean by that? Well, there was a time in this country where if you were a Republican or you were a Democrat, you figured out a way to get all the voters in your particular area. And then you fought over the handful of independents that trickled through the middle. But those days are long gone now. And I tried to explain this to basically anybody who would listen, and many of them chose not to, probably out of arrogance. what does he know? He's a podcaster. He doesn't have the pulse of the party and all this crap. Well, darling of the establishment Rhino Republican Party is Mike Lawler. And there was a time where establishment Rhino Republicans could go on Fox News and basically just walk through a propaganda interview where they, each attempted to have their lips as close to each other's asses as humanly possible, just to promote the message. But those days are long gone now. Those days are long gone, and we're going to have some fun at the expense of Mike Lawler. A, because I don't like the way he votes, but B, because I don't like him, like as a person. He's kind of a dick. Also, he looks like an 80s porn star. So I don't like him. I don't like him on a plane, and I don't like him on a train. So after he and 7 other Republicans decided to sell out their voters with this temporary protected status, 300,000 Haitians have to stay here because Haiti sucks. Spoiler alert, Haiti has always sucked. That's why when you go to Haiti, I don't know anybody who does, but if you were going to go to Haiti, you would stay at some resort and you wouldn't just be casually walking around the market in Port-au-Prince because there's a good chance of you being cut up into several pieces. Well, because Haiti sucks, we decided to take in about 3% of their entire population. And Donald Trump has attempted to end that temporary protective status. Well, as we saw last week, Rhino Republicans decided to vote against the president's not only directives, but the reason why we sent them there in the first place. And Mike Lawler has taken a lot of the brunt of it. And there's a reason for it. There's a reason for that. He's not the biggest rhino that voted for this. That would go to Brian Fitzpatrick and Don Bacon for sure. Because nothing says establishment rhino Republican like being from Nebraska. But, I digress. The reason why Mike Lawler has taken the brunt of this is because he wants to be famous more than he wants to do right for the people who sent him to Congress in the first place. So he went on Fox News last night, or was it Saturday? Saturday, and attempted to defend keeping 350,000 Haitians in America for really no discernible reason. And he gets dog-walked by Joey Jones. Absolutely dog-walked. And I love to see it. I absolutely love to see it. Here it was.
Congressman, I hope you see the irony that so many of the talking points you just used are used by Democrats every single day to attack the Trump immigration agenda. And I say irony because I think you're very genuine in what you're saying. But how do you start this with supporting the president in his immigration agenda and then tell me that because your district has a specific group of people from a specific country that you rely on, that you want carve-outs? And let me ask, 315,000 Haitians here on this program, you say a third, so 100,000 of them are in the healthcare system. That's not to say if they're committing crimes or not. So are the other 200,000 worth keeping in the country so you keep the 100,000 in the healthcare system? Or have you been to Juarez? Have you seen the Mexican people that are strung up by the cartels there and the war that is Mexico? You could use this exact same argument if the Biden administration had applied this to Mexican migrants for the millions of people from Mexico that are here because they're working in industries that are incredibly important. We can't live if we don't eat, and they work on farms that produce food. So the righteousness of your argument doesn't necessarily address the fact that the Trump mandate for immigration is that if you came here illegally, or if you came here illegally and the Biden administration used their very bad policy to allow you to be here illegally, you still got to go back and try to come back in. Why does that work for Mexicans, Venezuelans, Colombians? There are a few countries that still have some exempt status. Why does it work for Chinese? The brutality of that government. Why would it work? Why does it work for Haitians only? Why is it only Haiti that it seems you and 6 or 7 of your colleagues take objection to? And the reason why I ask is you voted for the bill. So even though I understand the explanation you gave about if this, then that, at the end of the day, it was all or nothing, and you voted for all.
Now, listen to this Kamala Harris lobbyist word salad that does not address any of the points. Joey Jones basically asks, why is Haitian immigrants different than every other immigrant from every other repressive regime or every other illegal immigrant from every other country that also sucks?
So the bottom line is two things can be true at the same time. The Biden administration's policies were an absolute disaster, and our immigration system is fundamentally broken. I have always said I am against illegal immigration. I have always said I want secure borders. I want people to come here legally and lawfully. TPS is intended to be temporary, primarily related to humanitarian relief.
Yet you just gave 350,000 of them amnesty, despite the fact you're willing to say on television that it ought to be temporary.
And in the case of Haiti, it has been significant. They've had multiple earthquakes and hurricanes. They've
Not my problem.
had political unrest.
Not my problem.
You have gangs in charge of the entire country.
Also not my problem.
President Trump rightfully has made focusing on the Western Hemisphere a priority, and in particular going after the drug cartels. He has designated them as terrorist organizations. That is something I've advocated for.
There are no drug cartels in Haiti.
For years, because we're not able to import everybody. We're not able to have everybody come here. We are a generous people, but we have to take care of the American people first. At the same token, if you have a situation on the ground in these countries in our hemisphere and we are doing nothing about it with our allies or cracking down on the drug cartels who are engaged in human trafficking and drug trafficking, then we saw the result, a disaster at our southern border,
Congressman,
and Joe Biden allowing them all into our country.
Now we have to do stuff with our allies. Wait a minute. Okay. So it sounds like, hold this thought for a second. It sounds like Mike Lawler is suggesting that we can then send people back to Haiti once we have fixed Haiti. Okay. All right. We have to work with our allies in the hemisphere to make the country of Haiti better. Therefore, we can send the 350,000 back. It sounds like he said that.
Saw the result, a disaster at our southern border,
Congressman,
and Joe Biden allowing them all into our country.
Congressman,
We want
I
to
totally
stop
understand
that.
what
We
you
want to
I
stop
understand, Congressman, what you're saying here, but correct me if I'm wrong. It sort of sounds like you're saying that we must keep the world's people protected in this country until the world's problems are solved or until we go and solve the problems of other countries.
That's not what I said.
That's what you said. That's literally what you said. Those were your exact words. Let's go back, shall we? Let's see. Where was it in the clip?
Congressman, I hope you see the irony that
Generous people, but we have to take care of the American people first. At the same token, if you have a situation on the ground in these countries in our hemisphere and we are doing nothing about it with our allies or cracking down on the drug cartels who are engaged in human trafficking and drug trafficking, then we saw the result, a disaster at our southern border.
Congressman, I just want to...
Wait a minute. I thought he didn't say that. I thought he didn't say that. Us with our allies in the hemisphere need to do something. He didn't say that, though. Let me make this very clear. And look, I am doing absolutely everything I possibly can to not be one of these black pill people that thinks the end is nigh and thinks that the sky is falling. However, count them on one hand, most effective Republican activists in New York. I'm not saying I'm the biggest. Count them on two hands. Whatever. Why would I go help that man? Why would I do that? Why would I put any effort? Well, we've got to keep the seat. No, we don't. There is a part of me that I'm incredibly frustrated with, but a part of me that says, you know what? Let him lose, let the Democrat win, and then let's get somebody new in there in 2 years. Sacrifice the organ to save the body. Tommy Lahren continues.
saw the result, a disaster at our southern border,
Congressman, I
and
just
Joe
wanna- I
Biden
just wanna
allowing
interrupt
them
you a
all
little
into
bit.
our country.
Congressman,
We
I
want to
totally
stop
understand
that.
what you
We
were.
want to
I
stop
understand, Congressman, what you're saying here, but correct me if I'm wrong. It sort of sounds like you're saying that we must keep the world's people protected in this country until the world's problems are solved, or until we go and
No, that's
solve the
not what I
problems
said.
of other countries.
That's not what I said.
You said that we need to
That's
manage the
not what I said.
hemisphere. We need to fix Haiti before the Haitians go back.
No. President Trump is saying we need to address the problems in our own hemisphere. And the administration is rightfully taking action, cracking down on the cartels
There's no cartels in Haiti.
in Mexico and beyond.
In Mexico, correct. We're not talking about Mexicans. We're talking about Haitians.
Going after Maduro in Venezuela.
Once again, okay, different country.
They have isolated Cuba.
Third wrong country.
The fact is, Haiti has been a long-term ally, and we want stability on the ground in Haiti. The State Department itself is saying it is unsafe on the ground in Haiti.
I don't care.
You have over 100,000 people working in our healthcare system to support Americans. This is not like they're just sitting here doing nothing. They are working in our healthcare system. I am saying deal with this realistically, deal with it based on the merits of the situation. Every one of these cases should be heard. If somebody does not qualify and should not be in this country, the administration should move to deport them. If they are on TPS, revoke their TPS status.
Oh, okay, so every one of them should get a hearing. Okay. I hear you, Mike. Let's break that down. There's 350,000 of them here. So you want every one of them to get a hearing before they're deported. Do you know how long that's going to take? Now, look. Do I think that Mike Lawler is doing this out of the goodness of his heart? No, I don't. I really don't. Do I think that he wants to keep 350,000 Haitians in America because 100,000 of them may or may not work in the healthcare field? No, I don't. He's doing it because his donors and the rich people who support his campaign and the Albany lobbyists and the people who make sure he stays in power don't want to lose their housekeepers. And they don't want to lose their maids. And they don't want to lose the people who bring their children back and forth to school and to Little League games because they're too busy at Soul Cycle or cheating on their wives. Like, that's why he wants to keep these people here. It has nothing to do with the healthcare system. Moreover, New York City nurses this winter just went on strike for 2 months, demanding better pay and better conditions in which they are working in. Perhaps they would be able to renegotiate some of these union contracts in New York City if their work and their wages weren't being undercut by the supposed 100,000 people who are here from Haiti. What a thought! Holy shit! I have discovered the concept of supply and demand. Whoa! Somebody called Milton Friedman because Kevin Smith is on his way. I don't know. Or is it that many of these Republicans in purple districts think that there is going to be a bloodbath in the midterms? And because of that, what they are doing is trying to save their own asses with moderates who don't like the fact that their neighbor's cousin's brother just got deported because he's in the country illegally. So instead of doing what they said they would do when they got into office, they're selling you out to save their own asses. Now, I want to be clear. I think there is going to be that bloodbath in the midterms. But the reason there's going to be that bloodbath in the midterms is because of people like Mike Lawler, who sell out the base so people end up staying home. Because The bottom line is, when it comes to elections, whenever you think one way or the other, all elections are about is how many people you, as a candidate, can get off the couch and to the polling location. That's what it's about. It's not about policy. It's not about principle. It's not about how many lawn signs you put out. It's not about how many crappy commercials you put on television. It is about removing ass from couch and putting said ass in the polling location. Now, why would anyone do that for him and the majority of the rest of the neocon Republicans if they are selling out the base? Why would they do that? Trump's not on the ballot. So it's not like a lot of these guys can grab a hold of President Trump's coattails to drag them over the finish line like they did a year and a half ago. Because that's what happened. Many of the Republicans in the House of Representatives right now are only there because Trump was at the top of the ballot. And people like you and people like me said, I want to make sure that President Trump gets reelected, so I'm going to go to the polls, and we just voted straight across the line Republican. Or straight down the line, however the hell your ballot looks. That is not going to be a driving force in the midterms. So many of these people are going to have to stand on their own merits. The problem is, many of them have no merits. None. None whatsoever. And they're going to find out the hard way. And if the Republican establishment, whether it's nationwide or at a local level, does not grasp the fact that there are not 77, 78, 79, 80 million Republican voters, there are 80 million Trump voters. If they don't understand that, many of them will be working for McKinsey next year. Now, maybe that's their goal. Maybe their goal is to, work for a consulting company that helped poison my entire generation and led to the rise of people like Pete Buttigieg, perhaps. Look, I'm sure they pay very well. I'm sure they'll do very well for themselves. But if their goal is to get reelected and to stay in Congress, they need to stop this shit now. Because every day this goes on, it's going to get... Look, the divide in the MAGA base is apparent. It's obvious to anyone watching. And that divide is only going to get worse if a third faction is created by people like this. It's not an opinion. It's not a how I feel. It's what's happening on the ground. Look, do I think that the New York Mets have a good baseball team? Yes, I think they do. Have they lost 11 straight games and something needs to change? That's the reality on the ground. It's not about feeling. It's about what's happening. You have this new wave of the America First crowd coming up. You have them clashing with the MAGA base. And then you have the neocons out there who are trying to carve out their own little world so that they can secure their future when they eventually lose. It's like... It's frustrating because there are so many people out there. I include myself in the crowd, who catch so much shit on a daily basis for standing up for what's right. People who get threatened, people who get assaulted, people who die. Standing up for what they believe in, only then to have people like Mike Lawler go, that doesn't really mean anything. I'm going to vote how I want to vote. And I don't mean to attack Mike Lawler. I mean, I do, because I don't like him. But look, there's 10 other ones. There's Maliotakis, and there's Fitzpatrick, and there's Bacon, and there's Mario Ballart. There's Maria Salazar. But Mike Lawler wants to be a star. Like they say in Remember the Titans. You want to be a star? You better give a star effort. You want to be famous? You want to go on television? Then come with better answers than that. Because that man just said, we need to keep Haitians here because Cuba, Venezuela, and Mexico are dangerous countries. I don't know. Maybe Mike Lawler thinks that everyone from Latin America is the same. Maybe he does. I didn't know you could say that. And I am not the only one who feels this way. I'm not the only one who feels this way. Because Scott Pressler, my buddy Scott Pressler, he's ready to go to the mattresses against John Thune. But because John Thune is not up for re-election this year, he's deciding he's going to pick off a few of his friends instead. We'll get to that in 1 second. Before we do that, Mike Lindell.
I'm excited to announce that we're having our first ever mega sale on overstock clearance and brand new products. For example, save over 50% on this season's flannel sheets. Queen size only $59.98. Kings only $69.98. They sell out fast every year, so order now. Save 20% on our brand new My Crosses. They're designed in the likeness of the one I've worn every day for over 20 years. They come in men's and women's, and they're made right here in the USA. Get our 2025 six-piece My Towel sets for only $29.98. Our initial quantities are extremely low, so get them now before they go. And our best-selling standard My Pillows, just $14.98. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use this promo code to take advantage of our first ever mega sale. But wait, remember that $75 free shipping rule? Well, that ship is sailed because right now, every order ships absolutely free.
Guys, head on over to MyPillow.com and use promo code LOUD. That's MyPillow.com, promo code LOUD for their mega sale, guys. Head on over to MyPillow.com and use promo code LOUD. I didn't get to mention this because I must have just slipped my mind. But we also can't forget the argument that we need to keep 100,000 Haitians here to support the healthcare system or whatever the hell crappy argument he used. It's important to know that that is the same argument that plantation owners used when we got rid of the slaves. Well, we have to keep importing this cheap labor because if we don't, it's going to upend the cotton industry. It's the same argument. The exact same argument. But they don't seem to understand that. Or maybe they do. I don't know. Maybe I'm not giving them enough credit. Maybe they know what they're doing and they don't care. I don't know. But people are starting to get pissed off at this. Just as you and I are getting pissed off at people like John Thune, who apparently can't do anything. Anything at all. Like head up ass. Can't do anything. Can't control his caucus. Can't get rid of the filibuster. Can't pass any of the legislation. Well, Scott Pressler has decided, you know what? This was on Saturday. So Scott Pressler said it straight out, gives him 13 days. He gave him 13 days 2 days ago. Now we are at 11 days until the end of April to remove the filibuster and pass the Save America Act, or Scott Pressler's going after all of his friends.
From the Supreme Court.
Oh, sorry, wrong clip.
Now I'm giving a very peaceful warning to Senate Majority Leader Thune. He has 13 days until the end of April to pass the Save America Act into law. And respectfully, if the Senate Majority Leader is incapable of passing said legislation by the end of April, I will be going to Louisiana to help defeat Senator Cassidy in the May 16th Saturday primary. And I will be heading to Texas to defeat John Cornyn in the May 26th Senate runoff. And, you know, I've been nice. I've been really respectful. But the American people are fed up of electing people into power that don't wield that power when we have given them this massive opportunity to work on our behalf.
Wow, 13 days. I'm writing that down, and we will watch that clock.
Write it down, Kaylee. Hell, I'll go to Texas, and I don't know if I'm going to Louisiana. A little too hot there. A little too hot down on the bayou, if you ask me. But hey, look, I would love to go help Ken Paxton. I would love to go help Scott Pressler and Ken Paxton. Because it's time for these people to go. I'm sorry, I'm not just voting for you because there's an R next to your name. If you're not going to do anything. And when you have Fox News, like the epicenter of the last remaining vestige of the neocon warmongering establishment, when you have them going after Lawler, when you have them going after the ideas of the Chamber of Commerce, when you have Kayleigh McEnany even allowing Scott Presler on television to challenge the Senate Majority Leader, that's a big deal. Bill Cassidy, of course, one of the architects and one of the deciding votes in the Obamacare kerfuffle, he's been able to linger around for more than a decade because they're up every 6 years, so they can spend the first 2 years selling us out, and then the next 4 years trying to rebuild their reputation, which is what they do in the Senate, which is why it's almost impossible to get rid of some of these people. It's also impossible to get rid of some of these people because, as much as I love President Trump, sometimes his endorsements are shit. Like when he endorsed Lindsey Graham. Not good. Lindsey Graham stands in direct opposition to every single thing we voted for over the course of the last decade. I'm sure he had his reasons, but I disagree with it. And disagreement doesn't mean disloyalty. I can disagree with the president and still work to get his agenda passed, still work to get his agenda moving forward, still work for the policies that we were promised. For example, here's another person who has had disagreements with the president in the past, but still remains loyal to the movement that they stood behind at the very beginning. And that, of course, would be Joe Rogan, who had disagreed with the president on the war, has disagreed on a few different things in the past. Yesterday, stood behind him in the Oval Office. Which is why I sit and I see the tiff that's happening out there, whether it's Tucker, Megyn Kelly. I put everybody always seems to lump together, like Alex Jones, Tucker, Megyn Kelly, and Candace. I don't think any of them are remotely the same. It's like LGBTQ. Like, none of those letters have anything to do with each other, but for some reason everybody lumped them all in together. Candace, I don't like. Tucker, I'm liking even less. Megyn Kelly, I think, is in a totally different group. And Alex is going to be Alex. Let's be real here. But if I'm getting 9, 8, 10, if I'm getting 8 to 9 of the things that I want, and one thing that I don't want, I'm still going to support the president and the president's agenda. And Joe Rogan did the exact same thing over the weekend when we saw a huge executive order signed directing the FDA to really, and this is huge. This was one of those things that, like, really happened under the radar. It had the news cycle for like 15 minutes, but I think it's going to really have long-lasting implications far beyond when Trump leaves office, just like the Trump accounts will. Well, he signed an executive order directing the FDA to review psychedelic drugs designated as breakthrough therapies. This is huge. And look, this is something that Rogan has been a fan of for a long time. He's talked about things like DMT and ecstasy or MDMA, I should say, being used as therapy for things like PTSD, anxiety disorders. Well, President Trump signed an executive order on Saturday, now reclassifying many of these drugs so that they can be used in clinical trials for many of our service members coming home. Here he was signing the order in the Oval Office.
I sent President Trump some information. We have a gigantic opiate problem in this country, obviously. In 2024, more than 80,000 people died of overdoses. It's a horrible number. And there's more than 5 million people that are addicted to opiates right now in this country. With one dose of Ibogaine, more than 80% of people are free of that addiction. With 2 doses, it's more than 90%. I sent him that information. The text message came back, sounds great. Do you want FDA approval? Let's do it. And it was literally that quick. These drugs are illegal not because they're harmful. They're illegal because of the 1970 Controlled Substances Act that was passed by the Richard Nixon administration. They did it to target the civil rights movement and the anti-war movement. It's not because these drugs harm people. And for 56 years, we've lived under those terrible conditions. We're free of that now. We're free of that now. Thanks to all these people that we see next to me, and thanks to President Trump.
And look, that is something that's going to have real-world impacts for a lot of people. And Joe's exactly right. Many of the scheduling of the drugs, I mean, look, you can be as anti-drug as you want. I'm pretty libertarian on it, just on a personal level. But, you know, there's no way you're going to tell me that marijuana and heroin should be scheduled in the same classification. That just doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Meanwhile, you got opiates out there, which are basically heroin in a pill, being prescribed to every person who had a bad knee once in their life, while pharmaceutical companies made billions and billions and billions of dollars to poison my entire generation. Now we actually have something happening on the front that could make those people's lives better. And look, it might not work, but we couldn't even test the stuff. This Ibogaine, I've never even heard of it. But many of the people standing back there have. So remember, just because you may disagree doesn't mean disloyalty. Because if Joe Rogan was disloyal to the president, he wouldn't have made himself into that room. And if he hadn't gotten himself into that room, if he hadn't sent out that text message, perhaps we would be seeing things very, very differently. In terms of many of these psychedelic medications that can now be tested. I'm sure if you're suffering from opioid addiction or PTSD, or somebody just texted me that this Ibogaine can help people quit smoking, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who would love to be part of these medical trials to try to make their lives better. So disagreement doesn't necessarily mean disloyalty. So many people have called me out. You're turning on Trump. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. Disagreement doesn't mean you're turning your back. So I'm happy that the president did that. I'm happy Rogan was there for it. And anybody who's watched Joe Rogan for years knows this is like one of his pet projects, we'll call it. He's spoken about it for a long. He's a huge advocate for psychedelics. I'm not a fan. You know, why do I need to be in a different reality when I love the reality I'm living in? But you know, if this can help some people, then thank God, and hopefully we get more of it. In just a second, the Nick Shirley Act. This continues to be. The fact that Democrats can do this with a straight face actually really worries me for what comes if they ever regain power ever again. We'll get to that in 1 second. Before we do that, here's Jeremy.
Hey, everybody. If you're not familiar with, then let me introduce to you Armor Colostrum. Now, I didn't know what colostrum was up until a few years ago. I'd never even really heard of it. And then my wife turned me on to Armor Colostrum. And what colostrum does is it helps regrow your hair. Not going to lie, that's the reason that I started looking into it. But then I started noticing some other things that I could benefit from. I used to get acid reflux very badly. I used to bloat very badly. It felt like I was 10 or 15 pounds heavier than I was until I made Armor Colostrum a part of my everyday schedule. And now things have changed so very much. Let me introduce to you what Armor Colostrum actually does and what it looks like. In a study measuring immune cell response to toxin, Armor Colostrum performed 32% stronger and faster than other colostrum companies. 400 plus bionutrients activated in your life, in your body, to help regrow hair, strengthen your gut health, regrow your nails, toenails, and fingernails healthy, get rid of fungus, stop bloating, and more. And now you can get yours right now for up to $18 off each and every purchase at tryarmra.com. Promo code LFATV. Click the apply button once you've entered the code and watch your discount fall off. That is tryarmor.com/LFATV. Order now.
Guys, head on over to mypillow.com and use promo code LOUD. Oh, wow, wrong read there. Head on over to tryarmor.com and use promo code LFATV. That's tryarmor.com and use promo code LFATV. Giddy up, let's go. So let's talk about the Nick Shirley Act because obviously that's been in the news a lot over the last couple of weeks with California Democrats basically attempting to pass a law to stop any sort of independent journalist from doing their job for any reason. Well, Nick Shirley decided to catch up with the Speaker of the California House and walk her outside, which I thought was pretty funny. Here that was.
The bill AB 2624, why would you sign off on that? It's a direct violation of the First Amendment, and it makes it harder for people to expose fraud here.
We have Ledge Council. They check the constitutionality of all our bills as we're writing them. I work on fraud issues. You'd know that if you look at some of the work I did on the budget subcommittee.
Amazing. So Mia Bonta, her husband's the Attorney General of the Attorney General of California, and it was only until I exposed fraud that they actually cracked down on the fraud and made some arrests here, especially with the hospices. And do you know that if this bill were to pass, it'd make it illegal for someone to go after fraud, especially if it's based off of immigrants, for instance, the Armenians in California?
No, I think that that's a misinterpretation of the bill, but I'm happy to talk with you more about it. And fraud and investigations into fraud are something that's been happening for a very long time. The Attorney General handles those cases. This is an ongoing issue.
It's a little weird that the wife of the Attorney General, Mia Bonta, is now pushing this bill that literally goes against the First Amendment.
No, I actually don't. I don't think that this bill violates the First Amendment. I mean,
really?
that's the whole purpose. We have Ledge Council and Ledge attorneys that talk with us about this. Constitutionality is really important to the work.
So your bill criminalizes publication of images recorded in public. Do you believe the government has the right to punish journalists for filming in public space?
No, I think that is a complete misinterpretation of actually the piece of legislation.
That is not. That's literally what would happen. Speaker Rivas, how are you doing? What do you think about the Stop Nick Shirley Act, AB 2624?
I don't know anything about it.
And do you think there's any conflict of interest there with Mia Bonta and her husband being the AG? That just shows you everything you need to know. These people won't even answer the questions.
Of course they won't answer the questions because they're cowards. And the whole point of their legislation is to stop Nick from being able to do exactly what he's doing right there on the ground. That's why I keep telling you guys how important it is to support independent journalism, because without guys like Nick, without a lot of the people out there doing this sort of thing, we would be in serious trouble. Speaking of more fraud going on in the state of California, do you guys remember last week when we showed you the James O'Keefe video? We showed you the James O'Keefe video of him out on Skid Row getting images and getting video of people trading cigarettes and money for illegal signatures on ballot initiatives. Well, I don't know if you know this or not. But the year that we're currently in is 2026. 2026. Well, it turns out the California Attorney General is looking into this very deeply. Very deeply. They're looking into it so deeply that they have just announced investigations into this exact action happening in 2016.
9 people now face charges accused of bribing homeless people on Skid Row in order to get fake signatures for a large-scale voter fraud scheme. Homeless people were offered cash and cigarettes in exchange for hundreds of forged or fake signatures on state ballot petitions and voter registration forms. All of this according to the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office. This occurred during the 2016 presidential and 2018 midterm elections. Now, they did not say which specific ballot measure were involved. I'm Ken Molestina for CBS LA.
Oh, in 2016 and 2020. Oh, so this has been happening for a decade. More than a decade. Do you think that maybe there was a little bit of pressure put on by the O'Keefe videos? Probably why California is going out of their way. Probably why California is going out of their way to criminalize exactly what they are doing. I don't know. I'm just going to roll the dice. Say, just how long has this been going on for? Because what is the point of a ballot initiative if Democrats in blue states can just rig the ballot system to get whatever they want on the ballot in the first place? What's the point? And they're going to keep doing these things. Meanwhile, I have a difficult time getting a call back from people running for office. I don't know. But these things always seem to go one way. They always seem to go one way. They never seem to go in the other direction. There never seems to be widespread voter fraud in blue city, in red cities. There never seems to be a story like this one of hundreds of unopened ballots found near a dumpster in the state of Washington. You never hear about that in Arkansas or Florida. You never seem to that doesn't seem to happen. Here we go from the Post Millennial. A box containing hundreds of unopened state ballots in Washington was reportedly discovered next to a dumpster behind a strip mall in Renton, raising serious concerns about ballot handling and election security. Washington State Republican Party Chairman Jim Walsh said a concerned citizen brought the ballots to the Bellevue GOP headquarters after finding them discarded earlier today. So, just to be clear, and this is an odd story in and of itself, you're walking behind a strip mall and you see a box near a dumpster and you just, let's see what's in there. And suddenly there's hundreds of ballots there. How often is this happening? How often is it happening that the people who put the ballots next to the dumpster didn't even consider putting them in the dumpster? How often is it? You just don't hear that. It seems like everything shady that happens seems to break in one direction. For example, another instance of this. This broke about an hour ago. It turns out we've got another major leak coming out of the Supreme Court. Another major leak coming out of the Supreme Court. Now, this is 3 in 4 years. This has never happened before. But all 3 times it happened, it seemed to break when the decision was going to be going in the conservative direction.
From the Supreme Court, the New York Times reporting it has obtained secret memos which it says, quote, illuminate the origins of the court's now routine shadow docket rulings on presidential power. Joining us now on those not-so-secret memos, Fox News legal editor Carrie Urban. I was thinking the last big leak out of the Supreme Court was Dobbs. And that was 4 years ago now. How time flies. And now this. Where's the stuff coming from?
And there was another one between Dobbs and this one, and that one was on presidential immunity. That was in 2024, I believe, and it was a memo that detailed how the chief was going to handle the decision. And within that same report, and that was also from the New York Times, was one about, there was some information about how he had reassigned an opinion from Justice Alito to himself because of the so-called flag controversy that was happening at his home at the time, if you remember that one. And so we're looking at 3 major leaks over the last 4 years, which is really unheard of for the U.S. Supreme Court.
Okay, so why?
It's a great question, Sandra. And look, I think these leaks tend to go in one direction, and it is to undercut what the conservative wing of the Supreme Court is doing or is in the process of doing. Certainly that was the case with Dobbs, and we saw what happened there when that decision was leaked. The justices faced violence at their homes. Attorney General Garland, unfortunately, didn't enforce the law at the time that would have stopped the protesters from doing some of the things they were doing around their homes. We remember that time. It was really troubling. It was the same time where that man attempted to murder Justice Brett Kavanaugh. It had some real world possible harms that could have occurred. And so why is it happening? Look, I think there are some disgruntled people that elections have consequences, and a Republican president has made some pretty conservative picks for the Supreme Court, and there are people who are unhappy with that, so they're willing to undercut and bypass the traditions and protocols of the Supreme Court and endanger its future, really, by leaking out things from that building to the general public who don't have the context and are certainly undercutting the public's trust just in the integrity of the institution by doing so.
You got to.
Isn't it weird how that just keeps happening every time the conservative justices are getting ready for a win? It's almost like somebody who works at the court who doesn't agree with what the court is doing is leaking these, usually to the New York Times, in order to put pressure on the court to do what they want. We saw it after the Dobbs decision, which overturned abortion. Well, didn't overturn abortion, just made it a states' rights issue, which it should have been the entire time. Not my opinion. That's Ruth Bader Ginsburg's opinion. Might want to look into that one. It never seems to, and look, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe sometimes it does happen the other way. I mean, I'd say I'm a pretty solid follower of news content. I don't see a lot of it. I really don't. Maybe I'm missing something. Perhaps I am. Maybe you guys can correct me. Maybe you can. But there is some good news coming out. There is some good news out there on the home front. Also, some of it coming out of the Department of Education, which I'm really excited about. Before we get to that, guys, head on over to lfatv.us. That's lfatv.us. That is your home base, your mothership, your landing pad for all things LFA TV related. Check out the LFA TV store. And while you guys are there, consider becoming a monthly donor over at LFA TV. This is user-generated content, and we cannot do it without your support. So, guys, we really do appreciate that. Once again, lfatv.us. That's lfatv.us. So, big news, the Department of Education will no longer be funding worthless degrees, which is amazing. I've long said, and some people have disagreed with me on this, and that's okay, that if you are poor and you are very, very smart, I don't think the American people would have an issue either subsidizing or funding your ability to go to school for something that could better us, not only as a culture, but as a country, something in STEM. If you're smart and we need more doctors, that is something that we could at least talk about. But if you want to go to college and study English literature or theater or political science, like the degree I have, you should have to pay for that yourself. Well, the student loan debt in the United States is now nearly at $1.7 trillion. And the Biden administration tried to enact plans to forgive much of that student loan debt, but the Trump administration is taking a very different approach, one that is likely to ensure it does not continue to balloon. This is big stuff. The Department of Education, taking its cue from the Work and Families Tax Cut, is restricting loans for university programs in which graduates of those programs do not earn as much as high school graduates. Yeah, that would make total sense. The Department of Education writes, if the typical graduate of an undergraduate program does not earn as much as a high school graduate, the program will no longer be eligible for federal student loans. Graduate programs must similarly lead to earnings above those of the average bachelor degree holder. Programs that routinely fail to provide students with a reliable return on investment would lose access to federal student loan funding and, in certain cases, Pell Grants. Yes. Look. If you want to go to school for sociology, go ahead. That's great. But you should have to pay for that yourself. If you want to go to school for theater, go ahead. That's great. I mean this. My poli-sci degree is sitting on the floor over there. It's not worth the frame that I put it in, and I think I got the frame at Michael's. We shouldn't be subsidizing degrees that will get you employed at Starbucks when you could just work at Starbucks. And believe me, I could do an entire show on the way we fix college in this country. An entire show on it. Because there are structural problems with this setup. We forced everybody to go to college. We didn't tell them what they should major in. And then they came out of school with a degree in European studies. And they thought they were going to make $100,000 a year because nobody told them that there are no jobs in European studies. There's a class at Wagner University here in New York. It's called Lesbian Dance Theory. You can watch their final exam on YouTube in Washington Square Park. That class costs $9,000. If you want to take it, go right ahead. I'm sure you're having a blast. I don't know what the hell lesbian dance theory is, but, you know, if you want to take that class, all power to you. But you should have to foot the bill for something useless. You should. When I was in college, I took a gym class. Do you know why? Because I didn't want to pay to go to the gym. So I took the class. That way, I figured, hell, I gotta pay the gym membership anyway. Might as well get 3 credits out of the damn thing. We don't need that. We don't need that. One thing we do need is voter ID, and luckily we could be getting some more of it.
Justice Department suing 29 states and Washington, D.C., saying they're refusing to turn over voter roll data to federal investigators.
We're doing that to make sure that states are in compliance. And guess what? We found at least 350,000 dead people currently on the voter rolls in those jurisdictions. And we've referred approximately 25,000 people with no citizenship records to the to Homeland Security to look at, dig into that further and see the extent to which people voted.
Meanwhile, as usual, voters appear to be on board for voter ID.
Which is probably why John Thune isn't passing it. But guys, it's 4 p.m. I want to thank everybody so much for tuning in. Head on over to loudmajorityusa.com. That's loudmajorityusa.com. Sign up for the newsletter. Check out our shop. I think Will is filling in for Hannah coming up next. Right? Yeah, I think so. Pretty sure. 90% sure it's Will. I will catch you guys. Wagner College is trash, but they had hot girls. All right, Tired. Take it easy over there. Take it easy. I'll catch you guys back live tomorrow. Until then, everybody, stay loud.